Hey folks, I'm a little under the weather as usual every so often, but anyway, we got a question from somebody, and I wanted to talk about this. Now, this relates to PlayStation. Quite a few comments. This relates to PlayStation facing billions in lawsuits starting in 2026. So yeah, I did want to talk about this because the question is right here. He says, I guess I don't understand what a monopoly on their store means. They want PlayStation games to be available for purchase for the console in other online stores. How is it going to help Sony or how it's supposed to work at all? I guess I'm just waiting for another video. So here you go. Also, to the guy, I can't find it right now, but there was a guy that said, aren't these class action lawsuits? We're not going to get very much. And I said they're antitrust lawsuits. And actually, I was incorrect on that too. They're both. So depending on which one you're looking at. But we'll go over each one and we'll take a look at what's going on here. So this is actually a pretty good, get out of the way, pretty good summary. U.S. PlayStation digital storefront involves allegations that Sony has established a monopoly in the sale of digital video games for the PlayStation console. Proposed class action lawsuit has been filed, which they've already won. But again, it wasn't very much money. Already been filed claiming that Sony maintained an illegal monopoly over the sale of digital PlayStation games and forcing customers to pay super competitive prices. The settlement amount was basically just under $8 million, which would be compensated to 4.4 million people in the United States who purchased certain video games through the PlayStation Store. So again, this wasn't like all games across the board. This was just a few actual video games. The lawsuit alleges that Sony's anti-competitive conduct began in April of 2019 when it prohibited third-party retailers and selling game-specific vouchers, which you can't buy anymore. If you notice, all of those are gone. We used to have those, but those vouchers in retail stores, they're all gone now. They don't exist. So the only way to actually get the game, some of these games on PlayStation Store, is directly through their storefront. You can't get it through Xbox. You can't get them through Steam. You can't get them as redemption cards or downloadable codes through retailers. There's literally nowhere else to get them. So then PlayStation can just charge whatever they want, and that is how they have a monopoly. When we take a look at the one in the UK, says right here, she says the company abused its dominant position in requiring digital games and add-ons to be bought and sold via only the PlayStation Store, which also charges a 30% commission to developers and publishers, which that's pretty standard. I mean, Steam does that too. Who gives a rip? The claim alleges customers have therefore paid higher prices for games and add-on content than they would have done. Sony's lawyers argue that, it's flawed from start to finish, say that it should be flown out. The Competition Appeal Tribunal ruled that Neil's case could continue, though it said people who have made PlayStation Store purchases after the case was filed in 2022 should be removed from their proposed class action. So yeah, we're going to see more on this in March of 26. So yeah, they're saying the same thing. That there's a dominant position requiring digital games and add-ons to be bought and sold only through the PlayStation Store. Again, that's a monopoly. Let's take a look at the Netherlands. Get out of the way. The class action lawsuit against Sony in the Netherlands centers on the PlayStation Store pricing practices. The Dutch consumer group, try it if you want, has accused Sony of the exploits of dominant position in the digital game sales market, leading to what they describe as the Sony tax. The practice has been alleged to result in consumers paying an average of 47% more for digital versions of games than for physical copies, despite lower distribution costs for Sony. The lawsuit claims that Sony has banned also third-party app stores from accessing the PlayStation platform, further restricting competition and consumer choice. The case has garnered support from over 20,000 participants and in part of the Fair PlayStation campaign. The lawsuit is part of a broader effect that addresses the perceived monopoly on digital sales and impact in consumer purchasing power. So, and their prices are pretty insane because, you can look, and I don't think it's just them. You can pretty much look anywhere at a used copy of, let's say, God of War versus God of War on the digital store, and the prices are vastly different. Vastly different. As just an example. We take a look at Portugal here. Let's see, that was actually midway. Okay, let's read this. It's a little wordy, but we'll get through it. After the Portuguese Competition Regulation and Supervision Court, a popular action that aims to defend all customers living in Portugal who have been harmed by Sony's anti-competitive practices related to the PlayStation. Since 29th November of 2013, Sony has engaged in practices with the effect of controlling and drastically restraining the production and distribution of digital and physical games, add-on content, game library services like your backwards compatibility, and online multiplayer services. It created an artificial monopoly for the distribution of PlayStation digital content and services. It prohibits the resale of video games in digital or physical format. It enforces restrictions on cross-consumer commerce between platforms and game contents. This popular action aims to put an end to Sony's anti-competitive practices, which significantly limit and in some cases completely exclude competition in several markets. These practices prevent the supply of new and better products and services and reduced competitive constraints, leading to higher prices being paid by consumers. Thus intends to change the situation and to ensure that customers are compensated. So let me go back to this. Anti-competitive practices in question caused harm to consumers by the following way: compromising healthy competition and consumer protection in the Portuguese market, with multiple consequences on the quality, variety, and innovation of products and services in these markets, and causing damage to consumers and causing an unjust enrichment at the expense of the unjustified impoverishment of the represented customers, or consumers, excuse me. As an example, customers paid more for PlayStation 4 and 5 games and add-on content than they purchased. They were prevented from contracting only the online multiplayer services, which would have cost less if it had been sold autonomously. Anyway, that's tough word, guys. In a competitive environment, they were prevented from reselling games they no longer wanted to play. And ultimately, this is translating and restricting, which concerns digital physical games and PlayStation add-on content, to the overall compensation due to the Portuguese consumers until June of 2023, amounting to more than 235 million euros. So that's not going to be as spendy, of course, as the UK, but there we actually have an amount for the Portuguese. So this is starting to add up to be quite a bit for Sony. We're probably going to get fairly close to $10 billion between the three newer lawsuits. And yeah, this is going to be tough for them to swallow if all of these actually goes through. And again, my biggest concern for them is that if there are three more that can sue for how their practices has been with their digital storefront and how it's controlled and adjusted the market, if they win, well, more countries can sign up. There's over 70 countries that have the ability to play PlayStation around the world. And so that's going to be an issue. But the thing that keeps coming back is the digital store. Is that it's constantly coming back to the digital store, how they're not allowing competition, how really they keep funneling, restricting, and even excluding other competition. And this is what happened to actually the Apple Store for developers. And, well, they got to open it up now. This also happened with Google, with some of their services back in the day. And this is usually how antitrust goes. And, again, these are not necessarily some of these the actual government is suing, and other times it's private law firms that are suing for a country, for the consumers. And those, I guess, would be actual class actions. But either way, this isn't good. Yeah, not at all. This is going to be pretty damaging. And even if they lose to a couple of these, that's still going to be more money out of their pocket. And PlayStation can't really afford that right now because their profit margins are so low. It's going to hurt. So with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. Like and sub if I've earned it. Also promote the video, hype the video, all that kind of stuff, whichever way you'd like. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next one.